Welcome to LifeTalk for December 1999. I'm Mark Crutcher, president of Life Dynamics, and we've got a lot of interesting things to talk about. Central, what's up this month?
Well, we're going to be talking about why our information on the abortion industry's selling of baby parts has become such an incredibly hot issue all over the country. If you've been following the media coverage, you know that this deal has the pro-lifers up in arms and the pro-aborts absolutely scared to death. And we're going to tell you why.
That's right. You know, Zentra, the abortion industry really has that old deer in the headlights look over this baby parts business. I mean, these guys are petrified.
You can say that again, but if they think it's hot now, they ain't seen nothing yet.
That's absolutely right. Well, in any event, we're also going to be talking about the media's disgraceful role in the abortion battle, and then later we'll be giving you some practical ways to fight the abortion mill that may be in your town, or better yet, how to keep it out in the first place.
Well, it sounds like we've got a great program again this month, and we're going to get right to it just as soon as Alan Ackles brings us the news. Alan?
Right, Mark, thank you. Responding to a story first carried on LifeTalk in July, Republican presidential candidate Steve Forbes called on opponent George W. Bush to rescind legislation he signed naming a state highway after a Houston area abortionist. Questioning Bush's commitment to the pro-life cause, Forbes stated that there was no justification for any candidate who calls himself pro-life to celebrate and honor an abortionist. Saying he would pursue a principled strategy to end abortion, Forbes suggested that if Bush is willing to name a highway after an abortionist, he may also be willing to choose a pro-abortion running mate and appoint pro-abortion judges to the Supreme Court. In Washington, D.C., the National Institutes of Health is proposing using taxpayer funds to pay for research using specially engineered human embryonic cells. Pro-life groups, including American Life League and National Right to Life, were quick to condemn the proposal. Doug Johnson, legislative director for National Right to Life, pointed out that for the first time, human embryos will be deliberately killed under the sponsorship of the federal government. Longtime pro-life Congressman Chris Smith of New Jersey called the proposed guidelines a sham and said they attempt to give a glow of respectability to truly barbaric and grotesque experiments on human beings. Lawmakers in the Wisconsin State Assembly passed a bill that offers job protection to health care workers who refuse to participate in abortion, sterilization, the withholding of nutrition or water, and assisted suicide. Also protected against losing their jobs are workers who refuse to be involved with fetal tissue, the destruction of a human embryo, or the implantation of fertilized eggs. In a second pro-life victory, a measure was passed that insulates physicians from civil lawsuits if they fail to diagnose or inform patients about defects in their unborn children. The bill also prevents wrongful life lawsuits being brought against physicians should a disabled child be born. Both bills will now go to the Wisconsin Senate for consideration. In Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Planned Parenthood's plans to open a new death camp have run into a snag. State regulations require that all abortion providers must have an advance transfer agreement to an emergency hospital. To date, however, all 5 local hospitals have refused to sign such an agreement and have kept the facility from opening. Planned Parenthood sought a waiver from the requirement, but health officials refused, saying no waiver will be granted. Planned Parenthood of Susquehanna Valley President Nancy Osgood said, "Everybody's dumped us. They have no desire to be associated with Planned Parenthood as an abortion provider." In Ohio, health department officials inspected that state's abortion clinics and found that the majority had no license to operate. Now the state is instructing them that if they don't comply with the law, they must shut down. Pro-aborts in the state are claiming that they are being unfairly targeted, calling the licensing requirement burdensome. State Representative Jim Jordan disagrees, saying that unlicensed clinics pose a health and safety risk and should be closed until they get a license. In Fairbanks, Alaska, abortionist Clarice Dukeminer has quit and no other doctor has stepped up to take her place. Now this leaves Alaska's largest city with no abortionist. Local pro-aborts have vowed to assemble a list of doctors in other cities who are willing to perform abortions and provide the list to local residents. In a related story, Tulsa abortionist Dean Diamond has also quit and his statewide abortion clinic bulldozed. This leaves Oklahoma's second largest city with only one part-time abortion mill remaining open. And in Texas, abortionist Henry Garza has quit his jobs at both of the El Paso abortion mills where he worked. Garza is a resident at Texas Tech University in El Paso and moonlighted at the abortion mills. Garza was recently the target of an aggressive direct mail and picketing campaign by local pro-life activists. In Missouri, Planned Parenthood has been pulled off the public dole and must also return more than $100,000 it has already received this year. County Judge Byron Kinder ruled that giving state money to the state's largest abortion provider violates the state's ban against using taxpayers' dollars to pay for abortions. Planned Parenthood officials claimed that none of the money allocated by the state was ever used to directly pay for abortions and said they will challenge the ruling in a higher court. In Wichita, Kansas, local pro-lifers have opened a state-of-the-art crisis pregnancy center directly next door to one of America's most infamous death camps. Choices Medical Clinic, located next to abortionist George Tiller, will offer pregnant women practical alternatives to abortion, 3D sonograms, complete prenatal care, and post-abortion counseling. The new center's medical director, Scott Stringfield, says they have already secured the help of about 24 area physicians and more than 30 volunteer counselors. And finally, 7 months ago in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, 30-year-old Cheryl Threadgill was told by her doctors that she had skin cancer and needed to undergo an abortion in order to start chemotherapy. Pregnant with her second child, Mrs. Threadgill rejected her doctor's advice, saying that just as she wouldn't harm her born son, she wouldn't harm her unborn daughter. Well, 11 days after the birth of her baby, Ms. Threadgill lost her battle with cancer. Just 1 hour before her death, her second-grade son told her that it was okay for her to go to heaven now. Following his wife's death, Ms. Threadgill's husband, Ted, was quoted as saying, "I'm so proud of her. It was a life-and-death decision, and she chose to take her own life instead of her baby's. If Cheryl can see us right now, I'm sure she's as happy as can be that Sarah is thriving." Well, that's LifeTalk News for December 1999, and Mark, back to you.
Well, thank you, Alan. Great job. A lot of interesting news this month.
A lot of good news with abortionists quitting.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to talk about something that's just been pestering the devil out of me over the last few days. You know, we had these protests up in Seattle over the World Trade Organization and all that. Let's recap this situation for a moment. $20 million in lost revenue for local business, $2 million in property damage. The police chief winds up having to resign. A warehouse is taken over by a bunch of Marxists and leftists. The National Guard has to be called out, and a curfew had to be enforced on the citizens of Seattle. Where is the Janet Reno press conference?
She called one, didn't she?
Oh, yeah, you bet.
We just all missed it.
If this had been a pro-life protest, Janet Reno would have been on television the next morning, and it's an example of what we've talked about before. They have turned the Justice Department into a private police force for the abortion industry.
And it's a completely different standard for
What's
everyone
interesting
else.
is I called the Justice Department to get them to comment on this. And of course, I got the runaround from eight or nine different
Right.
people. One guy even hung up on me when I asked him
Too
to
hot to
explain.
touch.
Oh yeah, why explain why they would do this against pro-lifers but not against these people. And they were going to send me a faxed statement. I never got that. It's just amazing. These people have literally turned the United States Justice Department into the abortion industry's private police force, and we're going to keep pointing it out. And this is a good example of it.
That's right.
Also, we had the Reverend Jackson on Crossfire. And this always infuriates me when I see these the people from what we now call the godless left, and the people like Jesse Jackson, on there using scripture. He was talking about the situation in Illinois where he's going after the school district now because of disciplining these kids that got in this fight. And he's on there using scripture, talking about, we have to, as the Bible says, take care of the least of these, and these are the least of these. And this man is a radical pro-abort, and nobody calls him on it. I want to read you what he used to say about abortion. There are those who argue that the right to privacy is of a higher order than the right to life. This was the premise of slavery. You could not protest the existence or treatment of slaves on the plantation because that was private and therefore outside your right to be concerned. What happens to the minds of a person and the moral fabric of a nation that accepts the aborting of the life of a baby without a pang of conscience? And it goes on, talking about how concerned he is. This, of course, was in 1977, before
a lot has changed since then.
Before Mr. Jackson decided he wanted to be the presidential nominee of the abortion party in America.
Well, politicians change, but some things never change. One thing that never changes is the abortion industry's covering up for rapists, for abusers. This man, a Mississippi man, was arrested in Louisiana the other day for 2 rapes that occurred 15 years ago. He was over 20. He was in his 20s, and the girls were in their teens. And he was only arrested after they went and complained about it some 20-odd years later. So that begs the question. And also, of course, the girls went and got abortions with his
At the
help.
time,
And
right.
nobody at the abortion mill reported it. Nothing was
Right.
done about it. And the only way we know about it is the victims themselves finally came forward.
Well, it's like we've always said, abortions, particularly on rape and incest victims, protect the criminal,
Right.
the rapist or the person who's
Right.
committing the incest.
And just sends the girls
Right.
back to be victimized all over again.
Exactly.
Year
right.
after year after year.
Well, another thing on the political front is we have Diana DeJette, the representative from Colorado, who led the House opposition to the resolution calling for an investigation into the baby parts marketing, now doing some backpedaling because she's gotten some flack over being opposed to it. And she's saying she was never opposed to the investigation, only to the procedure. There was a procedural issue that she had to complain about how
Well, anybody buys into that,
Tancredo brought it up.
yeah, we can play them the tape. This woman was in dire opposition.
Oh, she was absolutely. She said they weren't calling for a vote against the resolution. Well, there were people. They were there, and somebody voted against it.
They voted against it, right? Absolutely. It's incredible. The lies that the abortion industry tells to try to hide the truth from the American people is just amazing. I think you had something about a story on RU46 complications.
Yeah, there was an Iowa story. A woman was taking part in the U.S. trials for RU46. She was in shock after she had lost 1/2 to 2/3 of her total blood volume. Wow. And emergency surgery had to be done to stop her hemorrhaging. And, of course, Planned Parenthood spokespeople told the media that the Iowa trials were completed successfully with no complications among the 238 women who ended their pregnancy without surgery.
And their whole
Excuse
point-
me.
Well, and then when they were called on it, they said, well, basically their reference was that the trials were a success, not that the patient's experience was a success.
Right. The trials were a success, right? Oh, yeah, that's great.
And that just really
Again,
points
we
out
have
these
Clinton
people's
speak that's
position.
infiltrating every portion of our society.
Yeah, and we were seeing,
really amazing.
we're also seeing a lot of stuff on the protesting of these people that are involved in the baby
Oh,
parts.
the baby parts marketing, definitely. There have been protests at the Anatomical Gift Foundation. They also, some pro-lifers have begun protesting the company
Jaron.
called Jaron, the corporation, in Menlo Park, California. And so, because they do stem cell research using cells from aborted
Also
babies.
at the University of Nebraska. There's a big flap going on over there.
Definitely.
Something I noticed the other day that was interesting is Albright, Ambassador Albright coming out.
And basically,
Not Ambassador, she's
Secretary of State,
Secretary of State,
Madeleine
right.
Albright, basically appeasing the pro-abort, saying that in the next budget year they are going to be requesting an increase in funding for international family planning programs,
Right.
basically to restore it to its record high 1995 levels.
Yeah.
So this whole thing that just happened with them decreasing the funding of the family
Yeah.
planning is
It's
just
a
a
shell
temporary
game.
it's a temporary issue.
Yeah, it's a smoke and mirrors thing, and it's the kind of thing. It's typical of the Clinton administration's approach to all of this stuff. Yeah, we'll do what's politically expedient right now to get this budget going, but it's still winking a nod. Don't worry, next time we're going to come back and take care of you. We'll get some of the money in there for abortion.
Yeah, but
it's just astonishing.
The fact that babies are dying is not going to
Right.
go away, and that's why they're so scared of this baby parts marketing story. They're
Right.
also scared of stories like this out of Boston. Shantae Renee Jones, 14 years old and 7 months pregnant, was found in an alley murdered 2 weeks ago. Arrested was supposedly father of the unborn child. And he was arraigned on double murder charges, and of course the pro-aborts are absolutely going crazy about this. The National Abortion Rights League up there in Massachusetts politely declined to answer about this specific case, but she did say she was, quote, concerned about creating, quote, a future assault on Roe versus Wade.
Right.
And of course, these same pro-aborts are the ones, if you remember in last month in Soapbox, I pointed out, they complained that the most pro-life states are the ones that don't have laws that protect the unborn babies.
That's right. And
Which is it?
then you have this situation
Where they're
they,
complaining when they do protect
Right.
unborn babies
Right.
from
It's
assault.
They don't know what
astonishing.
they want.
The hypocrisy of these people, I don't think knows any limits. But you mentioned a moment ago that the pro-aborts are just absolutely panic-stricken over this baby parts thing, and we're going to come back in just a moment after we take a break. We're going to be coming back and talking about why it is that they're so panic-stricken over this issue.
It's a fact. The most frequently read part of any newspaper is the editorial page. It's also a fact that Life Dynamics can provide you with more than 400 pro-life letters to the editor that you can copy, combine, and customize to literally dominate the abortion debate in your local newspaper. Remember, more revolutions have been won with printing presses than with guns. And this book is guaranteed to give you the firepower you need to duke it out with the most aggressive abortion defenders in your area and win. To get your copy of Letters to the Editor, send just $10 to the address on the screen. For MasterCard and Visa customers, you may call toll-free 1-800-401-6494. Call today. Once again, that toll-free number is 1-800-401-6494.
You know, I've done about 40 or 50 talk shows on the baby parts thing since the whole thing began when we released it back in May. And I've noticed some things that are very interesting here. First, on the side of the pro-lifers, this thing is having, as you guys have seen, an enormous emotional impact on our people. I mean, we're having some very interesting conversations with pro-lifers who call in on these talk shows that you and I have done together.
Right, and not just interesting, but very emotional ones.
Right.
We have people calling up crying, saying
Right.
they can't believe this is going on.
Let me let's play a tape here of a couple, just two examples of this.
258-8255 if you'd like to join us. To the phones. Good morning. Thank you for calling.
Hi, I'm just so appalled by this. I'm probably going to start crying.
Hey, I did it last night sitting there watching the video, so just join me.
I can't believe this is going on in this country. I'm in the car right now with my son, going to buy stuff for his birthday party, and I can't listen to this with him in the car. I can't believe this. I just can't. I mean, I do believe it, but part of my mind is just saying, how can this be going on in this country? How can we be doing this to the most defenseless, the most precious, the most innocent, and say it doesn't matter, and that they're in the money is the root of it. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. God is using you as a tremendous tool and as a tremendous weapon against propaganda that the abortion industry is putting out there. And I just thank you for having the fortitude and the strength to deal with this and get the truth out there.
Well, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for the phone call.
Okay, bye.
258-8255 if you'd like to join us. Back to the phones. Good morning. Thank you for calling.
Good morning. It's Pat.
Hey, Pat.
And I am an OB-RN, have been for almost 30 years, and I am just so angry. I'm much in the same condition as the woman that called. I just got home from work. I've been there since 6:30 last night, and when I see these little babies in the NICU unit hanging on to life and the struggle that we put in hour after hour after hour, just willing these children to breathe, just willing these children to stay alive, desperately trying to keep them alive, and watching their parents grieving when we can't keep them alive. And I see this and hear this. I am so angry. The doctor that runs the abortion clinic here, I see on the floor, and I have to go down the hall. I cannot stay at the nurse's station when this man walks on the floor. To me, he is so despicable that he would come and deliver babies and leave from there and go and kill babies. And I can't tell you the rage that I feel.
As you can tell, these people are pretty upset, and these are just two of many that we've had. We don't even have tapes of the vast majority of them. The last one I did, I had a man call in who said he had to pull over the side of the road, and he was crying and said he just can't listen to this. On the other side, we're having all these pro-aborts that are conspicuous by their absence. They won't come on and talk about this. I've had a lot of these hosts call and say that they tried to get somebody to come on opposite me and they wouldn't do it, or come on and talk about this from the pro-abortion perspective. They wouldn't do it. And then you had that one person who said they
flat out they had the people from Anatomic Gift Foundation on, and the stipulation was that they did not want you to be opposite her on the program.
They don't want to have to answer questions.
They didn't care if they ran, ran an
debate,
interview
no
with you
dialogue
afterwards. But
the question here though is why. on the from the pro-life standpoint, why is this so emotionally impacting to our people? Because we've always known they're killing the baby, right? And so why are these people getting so bent out of shape about the possibility they're killing them outside the womb? Our argument is that these babies shouldn't be killed outside the womb. Our argument is they shouldn't be killed anywhere.
Well, I guess my question then is, did we really believe it all along? I mean, if it's upsetting the pro-lifers, us, the pro-lifers, as much as it has been, and it definitely has from what we've heard, did we really believe our own rhetoric?
Well, that's the uncomfortable thing that it brings into question. Why, and I've asked a couple of pro-lifers who've called in, why are you so upset over this when you knew that abortions were going on? And really, if they're killing the baby, what real difference does it make to you if it's inside the womb or outside?
Or if they chop them up and send them to the
once they're dead,
different corners of the country. Yeah, it really, I think you've hit on something there that to a large extent we don't believe our own rhetoric. And really we see that on a daily basis because the response we take that, okay, well, we'll wait to do something about this at a church pro-life meeting next month or something like that. We don't have an immediate response to the fact that they're killing babies in our own, in our own town every week. And so I think a lot of that is that. I think another issue is that I think as a movement we've been naive about just how evil our opposition is. I think a lot of people seem to have the response, and I know to a certain extent I even did, guess I'm kind of sorry to admit that, we can't believe that they're going this far. Okay, we know they're killing babies in the womb. For whatever reason, our society has decided to accept that, and we just know we have to deal with that as an accepted thing in society that we're fighting against. But that we can't believe that they would go to the next step of chopping these babies up and selling their parts,
exactly,
or delivering them alive and then killing them after they've been delivered. I think we just can't believe that they'd actually go that far.
What we found out now is not only are they murderers, they're grave robbers. I mean, it's not enough that they kill the baby. They got to go back and pick the bones.
And it's just the ratcheting up of the violence, just like a few years ago, people started bringing guns and weapons to school, for example. Now we have, unfortunately, students killing other students.
We have a shooting a month, it seems like.
Right, and we're just ratcheting things up, and I think that's what's happened in this situation.
Well, what about the pro-aborts? Why don't they want to talk about this?
Well, it's just a political liability, right, that it humanizes the baby. Suddenly, rather than talking about something philosophical, we're talking about ears and eyes and limbs. Being procured from babies less than 8 weeks old.
Right.
They can't talk about the babies anymore as a glob of tissue or undifferentiated mass of cells or
obligate parasite.
Right. Or just in the vague terms of the pregnancy.
Right.
They can't do that anymore. Never again are they going to be able to talk about them in those vague philosophical terms that don't create an emotional response.
Right. When they put out the day that they started putting out price lists that say we'll buy the ears off of babies less than 8 weeks old, then what they were saying is that babies less than 8 weeks old have ears.
Right.
Now that they would have never admitted 6 months ago, and they've been able for the last 27 years to tell this lie that, like you said, it's just this big glob of tissue and this undifferentiated mass of cells, and now they can't tell that lie anymore. That lie is gone.
I mean, they are selling the baby parts, which is horrendous, but they are admitting in doing that the baby does have value.
Oh, yes, right. And, the thing about it is, too, the few of them that still cling to this argument that the baby's not human and not a human being, well, what is it you're selling here?
That's right.
What selling alien ears and alien legs, I guess.
Yeah, it's really astonishing. But I think the great thing here is, like I said a moment ago, it's taken away one of their biggest lies.
Right.
They cannot tell this lie anymore, and they know it, and I think it panics them. The other thing that panics them is, they can't argue against this from the standpoint of protecting a woman's right to choose.
That's
quote
right,
unquote.
because all this happens after the abortion has already taken place.
Right.
And the woman doesn't have any choice in this matter either, incidentally.
In some cases, that's right.
I would venture to guess that very few women know that this baby part selling is going on after the abortion takes place.
Yeah, well, by law, they're supposed to get a document signed saying they give permission.
Well,
but we know that as a
doesn't really happen.
As a practical matter, that doesn't always happen. So, yes, I think that a lot of these women are being shocked. And we've had some calls from women who've, and which is another odd thing about this. I know you got a very emotional call from one woman who is saying, I can't believe that they might have done this.
She had had an abortion. She was just wondering, what did they do with my baby? What did they end up doing with this baby after the abortion? And she just was traumatized at the thought that they might have sold the baby's
Now,
parts.
see, that's what I'm saying about the irrationality of this.
That was a question that they should have been asking all along. But now that we have this issue of harvesting baby parts, all of a sudden it's a viable question.
Yeah,
Well-
They should have asked it all along before. I mean, these babies
But wait a
don't
minute.
just vaporize.
But what I'm saying is, looking at it from this woman that you told me about that called that day, if she carried her baby in to be killed, why does she care what happened to it afterwards?
Well, first off, I think she was pro-life now, so that she had a
Right.
different perspective on the whole thing. But
Right. Yeah, but I mean, we've had other calls, and you know that all these women aren't pro-life. Why do they care that these people sold their baby if they're the ones who took it in to be killed?
Well, you know what? I think it goes back to the old "if I can't have it, nobody else will" argument. I have talked to so many women who have said, yeah, I can have an abortion, but I could never place the baby for adoption.
yeah.
I mean, I think it's the same dynamic at work there.
Right, right.
That
It's
makes
a
sense.
weird
It's very
deal.
childish,
It's weird.
but
yeah, really, all of this discussion on the philosophical and also really psychological issues behind this is just really interesting. That
Yeah.
just from both sides, why the pro-lifers are so bent out of shape and why the well, I think we could pretty well understand why the pro-aborts run from it so
Right.
quickly. But I really hope we can kind of understand this a little bit more and figure out how better to use the psychology here behind it to help strengthen our movement.
Right.
We're going to be taking a break right now for Pro-Life 101, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about one of our very favorite subjects here at Life Dynamics, the media.
One of the most common questions you'll hear from people trying to defend abortion is, if you outlaw abortion, who's going to pay for all these unwanted children? Beyond the utter immorality of suggesting that children should be killed or spared based on how affordable they are, there are also several flaws in the question itself. First, all unplanned pregnancies don't necessarily produce unwanted children. It could easily be that the vast majority of all the pregnancies in the history of the world were unplanned. However, it is extraordinarily rare for a mother to look at her newborn baby and say she doesn't want it. This question also assumes that outlawing abortion will automatically produce more unwanted children. The fact is that the legality of abortion increases sexual activity among people who rely on it as backup birth control. This is obviously a philosophy that is guaranteed to produce more pregnancies, many of which will not end in abortion. It could be argued that the resulting children were actually created by the legality of abortion. Now, when someone tells you that this theory is far-fetched, ask them to explain why we've already killed more than 40 million babies in America through elective abortion, and at the same time appear to have more unwanted children than at any point in our nation's history. The final and most indefensible suggestion made by this sort of question is that human beings only have a right to life if someone else wants them. This is pure pro-abortion rubbish. You know, years ago, many women rejected the idea of putting Miss or Mrs. before their names, preferring instead the label Ms. The reason given was that these women didn't want to be judged on the basis of whether they were married or not. In other words, they didn't want to be judged on the basis of whether some man wanted them. Well, if it is wrong for women to be valued on the question of whether someone else wants them, it is even more wrong to try and excuse the legalized slaughter of children by claiming that they are unwanted. And by the way, the long lines for parents trying to adopt children effectively destroys the argument that these children are not wanted.
Well, welcome back. Now we're going to talk about what we know is one of Mark's favorite subjects, and actually I think it is for all of us at Life Dynamics, the media.
The media, oh yes. I love this deal.
Favorite ones to at least
Right.
pitch a fit over.
Right, exactly.
To set the stage, I want to talk about a few recent developments that we've seen in the media. The reporters the reporter who first broke the opening line story in West Frankfort, Illinois.
On the baby parts,
On
yeah.
the baby parts marketing. The newspaper is called the Daily American. The reporter who wrote the story and the editor who basically told him, we are going to cover this and we're going to make this a big issue, both have been fired from what they can tell for their coverage of the opening line situation.
You know, right after that happened. They were the first newspaper in the country to write anything about the baby parts business. And right after that happened, I got a call from a guy in Illinois who said, how on earth did you get them to write about that? That thing is owned by this publishing company, Liberty or something like that, publishing, and they are radically pro-abortion. I said, well, I didn't get them to do it. They called me. And it was interesting because we wanted to talk to the reporter about some other things that we're working on, called him back, and they said, well, he's on vacation.
And and he'll be back next Monday. So we call back next Monday, and he's still on vacation. He won't be back for 2 weeks.
And then he had quit.
Right.
And
Transferred off of payroll as a...
Right, transferred off of payroll, right. Now we have been able to get in touch with both him and the editor. Both of them were fired after this story came out. Were they fired because of the story?
They're convinced of it, and the thing is, usually when a person gets fired, they know what the reason is. They know what's going on.
The other thing is, this newspaper, our understanding, had not done well either subscription-wise or financially, but this editor, David Green, had turned the thing around, and it was making money. Their subscriptions were way up.
Why would you fire him out of the blue?
So why would you fire him out of the blue?
Thank you, you're fired.
Right, and thank you very much.
Thanks for your service. See you later. Right. Well, the other issue that's lately been in the media that just once again shows how...
Yeah, if you're a pro-lifer, or if you even want to make a pro-life point, you better tread lightly.
Yeah, exactly. And that is what happened to Matt Drudge on his program on the Fox News Network. He wanted to show the picture of a baby who was having in utero surgery to correct spina bifida, and he was just going to make a point of, and it's a very touching picture where the little arm of the baby's reaching out of the uterus and looks like it's grasping the hand of the surgeon.
Right.
And he just wanted to put it on there and just make some comment about life preborn.
You're operating.
Life.
What are you operating on here?
Right, exactly. The Fox News Network refused to let him show the picture because they said that they thought he was going to distort this as a picture of an abortion, which he would have no reason to do, and vehemently denies that that was his intent. Ultimately, he got fired over this. He refused to do a show because they wouldn't let him show the picture, and ultimately got fired because he refused to do the show.
Very typical.
Yeah, it really is. I think we see a pattern here. And I don't usually bring this up in polite company, but I do have a degree in journalism from Texas Tech.
Linda!
Yes. It is one of the burdens that I have to carry. Not Texas Tech, but the degree in journalism.
But therefore, you're a bit of a resident expert here.
Yes, and I think that there is absolutely no denying that there is a bias here toward the pro-aborts, but a couple of other examples, just in case anybody needs them. David Shaw of the LA Times wrote a story about the people that report on the pro-life, pro-abortion issue, and he found no one that was pro-life that were acting as reporters on these newspapers, such as the Washington Post, big newspapers.
That was actually a 4-part series that he did in the LA Times,
and it's picked up.
He looked at newspapers and TV studios, radio programs all over the country, and he documented the amount of bias against the pro-life position.
Yeah, I mean, there are just pro-lifers cannot be found, and in fact, there was a Lichter-Rothman survey done, and it found that over 90% of people working in the media are pro-abortion.
And they identify themselves as such.
Yeah, and so
themselves.
Where's the objectivity? Right. That was the first thing in journalism school that I was taught. You have to be objective and you have to report the facts. Well, now it's more, they can editorialize wherever they like.
Yeah. Why do y'all think it's so important? If people say, okay, yeah, the media is radically pro-abortion, what difference does that make?
Well, it makes a huge difference.
I want to answer my own question.
It makes it really hard.
I want to answer my own question here. I believe there's 2 institutions in America that are most responsible for the abortion holocaust, and it's not Planned Parenthood, and it's not the National Abortion Federation or Bill Clinton. It is the church, whose silence on this issue and their cowardice on this issue is well documented, and it is the media. Without the media, the abortion industry would never have been able to get abortion legal to begin with, nor to keep it that way. One thing that's really interesting here, and we've talked about this around Life Dynamics before, have you noticed how there are very many pro-abortion organizations that don't have newsletters?
They don't need to.
They
have the media.
They have ABC, NBC, CBS. It's just incredible.
Right. They don't need a newsletter. The national media is their newsletter. They're just lapdogs for these people. Now, we've seen some interesting phenomena here when we're dealing with the media, and we're seeing it happen to us again right now. when we released Lyme 5, one of the chapters in Lyme 5 was about the number of women who get raped and sexually assaulted in abortion, and we're going to be talking about that. I think we talked about it even the next show. We may be having a segment on that
Right.
on that subject. The media kind of picked up on this. We got a call from ABC News, primetime. Oh, we're very interested in this subject of women who get raped in abortion clinics. Can you please supply us with the names of some? We don't want people that did it years ago. We want somebody that's a practicing abortionist, somebody who right now is practicing abortion and has problems either in other states or in the same state with sexual assault or rape. We were able to give them 2 of them. Now, they told us they're going to fly to Texas here and they're going to do this big story. We gave them one in California and we gave them one in Ohio. Both abortionists who had licenses suspended or been under indictment, this guy in
Who
California.
are practicing now.
Who are practicing
Still
now.
practicing.
It's a current story.
Right. The second that we did this, they gave up on the story because the story was not going to be about abortionists who raped their patients. The story was going to be about this radical religious group, extremist group down in
Right.
Texas who's claiming that abortionists raped their patients.
Right, and digging up some obscure 30-year-old
Right.
case. And
And when we were able to prove that that wasn't the case, they lost interest.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing about that was, Zintra, what happened with the 2 people that we gave them? Have these guys been good little boys ever since then?
Both of them have been arrested
Right.
for sexual assault and rape since then.
One of them, over 70 cases.
That's right. And if Primetime had done their story, maybe women had been warned not to go
Right.
to them, or what more, maybe the medical boards would have paid
Right.
more attention to them, and the further rapes would never have happened.
And see, that's the abortion battle in microcosm right there. These guys could not have been able to do this. One of them tied the feet of a 13-year-old girl to the stirrups. The one in California had anal sex with her while she was in the stirrups. The other one, as we say, was arrested for 76 counts of sexual assault. They would not have done that had the media lived up to their responsibility. That is a micro example of the whole abortion thing.
Right.
The media protects these people. And now we're seeing it. When this baby parts thing first came out, we were called by Dateline. Well, you guys are making some very interesting claims here. Man, we want to do a story on this. This is real dynamite stuff.
it's about
Send
to
us-
be sweeps week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you got to send us the proof. We got to have proof that this is really true.
And we need
Okay.
it first thing in the morning.
Right. I
We
had
want
to-
to get on this right away, they
They
said.
called at 7 o'clock at night. I had to drive to the airport because UPS and FedEx and all of them had already run. So I had to drive out to DFW and send this to him because he said, we got to have it for our production meeting in the morning. When they got the material, they dropped the story. You know why? Because
true.
again, the story was
Right.
not going to be about the selling of baby parts. The story was going to be a slam on Life Dynamics because we're claiming this without proof. The minute we gave them the proof, they lost interest in the story.
That's right.
And we see this consistently, time after time after time. And right now, the media sources that are pursuing this story are basically having to be dragged kicking and screaming. And the only reason they are doing it is because they're afraid one of their competitors will do it, and they'll be behind the curve.
And a lot of reporters fancy themselves as instruments of social change. Well, here is a instance where they could have made a real positive difference, and they refuse to. And so
They
they
have a
bear the
different type-
responsibility of this happening in
Yeah, well,
large part.
They just have a different social agenda. This would not serve the change that they're trying to create.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the agenda. Let's talk about what the real agenda here is. You know, there's kind of a new paradigm in the American journalism, if such a thing exists. My view is journalism doesn't exist in America anymore, but let's just assume for a minute that it does. Used to, if you had 2 sides that were debating on something, and one side said A is true, and one side said X is true, and these were contradictory. They couldn't both be true. If a reporter was going to report on that, he would take A's position and X's position and go out and see who was telling the truth and who was lying and write about that. And that was what was called at that time, good, hard-hitting,
Investigative journalism.
fair journalism. Today, what they do is very interesting. If one side says A and the other side says X, they will give equal billing to both. They'll print both, and if you call them and say, Well, you allowed the other side to lie. They'll say, look,
But we told your side of the story, too.
we treated you fairly.
So what they're doing is they give equal billing to the lie and the truth.
Exactly.
And not only
What
that,
are they-
but then
and they admit it.
Yeah,
Right.
then
Yeah,
they
they're proud of it.
establish an 800 number where you can call and vote about whether this guy is innocent or guilty or
Yeah, right.
Right.
why do we even need them to do the story? If
Right.
we can just run some trial on TV and put up the numbers at the bottom,
Well,
who
let
thinks
me
it's
give you a
right?
real world example of this that I have seen time and time again. I've been involved in this, where they give equal billing to the lie and to the truth. I'll come out sometime on a show and say, look, abortion is legal right up to the moment of birth, through all 9 months of pregnancy, for any reason whatsoever, for no reason whatsoever, by a girl of any age, without parental knowledge, without parental consent, paid for with tax dollars. That's what the Supreme Court decided in 1973. The other side knows that if that truth gets out, the American people are going to be horrified. They don't want to think that abortion is legal right up to the moment of the birth, so they lie. They say, no. Roe established this trimester framework. You can have an abortion in the first 3 months, and I'm telling you, just in the last week, I saw a newspaper article in which that statement was made by the reporter. Roe made abortion legal for the first 3 months. Then after that, you have to have very special reasons and all this other nonsense, in spite of the fact that you can open up Yellow Pages and see abortions up to 24 weeks being advertised in the Yellow Pages.
Right.
So you have reporters that are lying, they're editors who don't know the difference between truth and a lie, all the way up the line.
But wait a minute. Here's what I'm saying. They don't, when I say, and I've challenged reporters to do this, I say, look, I'm going to tell you that abortion is legal right up to the moment of birth. They're going to tell you it's only legal for the first trimester, okay? Go out and check it out and see who's lying, because one of us is lying, and I want you to check it out. They won't do it. They'll say, no, we're going to give your statement and we'll give theirs, and that's equal journalism.
And I don't know
It
whether
sounds
they're
like they're just
capable of
lazy.
doing it. Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know whether they're capable of doing it anymore. They want to sit there and have the story come to them.
They do all sorts of things to manipulate how this story is reported. If they want the woman's view on something, whether it's abortion or whatever, who do they go to? National Organization for Women.
Right.
National Organization for Women has about 1/4 as many members as Concerned Women for America or Eagle Forum. But National Organization for Women is the spokesperson because they make the statements that the media wants to hear.
It's so simple-minded, just like Jesse Jackson speaks for black
Oh.
Americans.
Blacks,
and that's nonsense.
That's nonsense, absolutely. And the thing just goes on and on and on, and how the media controls this story. They control the language. They're much more likely to call our opponents pro-choice and us anti-choice. We saw an example of that just the other day.
recently, right.
Yeah. If they're forced to respond to, say, like a woman's been killed, they'll go in there and they'll say, yes, this woman's killed. However,
Only one in a million abortions results in a death.
they'll give the NAF quote. Abortion's the safest procedure known to man, and nobody
Much
ever
safer
gets
than
hurt.
childbirth.
They never do that if they report on a car accident
Oh, no.
fatality.
No, they don't ever do that. So the list just goes on and on and on. An abortionist gets shot. This is front page all over the country. It's the lead story on the broadcast news. A woman dies in an abortion mill. Nothing ever happens about it. The question is, and we could go on, and we are going to cover the media a lot in some future shows, but the fact is that no one, I don't think, can make a rational argument that the American abortion industry isn't just a snake pit of radical pro-aborts. And the question on that becomes why? Why are these people so sold out to the abortion industry? And some of them are evil. Let's just recognize that. I mean, I've dealt with one particular reporter at the Philadelphia Inquirer several times. This woman is just pathologically evil. But you know what I find to be more often the case than them just being evil? They're simply not very bright. These are not the sharpest knives in the drawer.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, I don't mean you, Linda, but journalism school apparently does not attract the brightest people on campus for some reason. It also seems that on college campuses, conservative students will go into things like business or education or whatever it might be. They'll go into something else. Conservative students don't tend to go into journalism.
Yes.
I think one reason is they know they're not welcome there. The chances that they'll get a good job as a conservative in mainstream journalism today is virtually zero.
Let's not even talk a job. The chances of them even being able to get some experience on the school newspaper is virtually zero.
Right. So I think J school, journalism school, becomes a sanctuary.
It's a hotbed.
For the radical left.
That's right.
And for the liberals on the campus and the people who can't do anything else. And unfortunately, that's what we have to live with. They're the people in control. Well, we're going to take a break now for Soapbox. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some things you can do to fight against the abortion mill that may be in your town, or better yet, to prevent one coming in the first place.
I'm going to tell you 5 true stories, and I want you to figure out what the common theme is. First, in Florida, the state legislature just passed a law allowing drivers to purchase customized license plates which display the phrase, "Choose Life." Funds from the special plates are earmarked for organizations that help women who want to place their children for adoption. Immediately, the state's abortion enthusiasts leaped into action, demanding that the state discontinue this horrific practice, threatening lawsuits and trying to tie the Choose Life slogan to the murder of abortionists. Second, a Texas crisis pregnancy center wanted to use photographs of unborn children that were taken in 1990 for a book entitled "A Child is Born." When they sought permission from the book's publisher, they received a polite response saying that they routinely grant permission for use of the photos by nonprofit organizations unless the organization is pro-life. Then, in Belmont, New Hampshire, a pro-life billboard showing a baby crawling beneath the caption, "Choose Life," was recently vandalized for the 5th time in as many years. Fourth, the public broadcasting system is currently airing a documentary entitled "Not for Ourselves Alone" about feminists Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Of course, at no point does the documentary mention the fact that both of these early crusaders for women's rights were staunchly and openly pro-life. And finally, in Canada, a pro-life student group put up a small display at the University of British Columbia. 2 hours later, the pro-choice crowd destroyed the display, overturning the group's tables, threw their literature on the ground, and stomped on it. Although the whole thing was caught on video, the student government voted to take no action, saying that the pro-lifers got what they deserved. Not surprisingly, some of the students who voted to let these pro-choice thugs get away with this were, in fact, the vandals. I know by now you have figured out that the common theme in these stories is the revelation that our opponents don't want choice, they want indoctrination. Even they appear to know that the light of day is their kiss of death, and pro-life rhetoric, a wooden stake being driven through their cold, black hearts.
Well, welcome back. Let's talk about what we can do, or what we can tell these people to do to help take the abortion mill out of their community if it's already there, or prevent it from coming there to begin with.
And it is a much better thing to prevent one from coming there in the first place.
Oh, absolutely.
It's much easier to prevent one than to get one out if it's already there.
Yeah, it's like it's easier to prevent a disease than it is to cure it.
Definitely.
Yeah, and
so,
this is a disease.
Oh, it is a disease. You know, we've kind of put together a list of things that you can do if you have an abortion mill in your town, or if you're expecting one to be open there. They've announced that there's going to be one. But there's also some things you need to be looking for to see if you're susceptible. In other words, are you a good place for somebody to put an abortion mill there? Because if you are, somebody is going to. Linda?
That's right, Mark, because we have to remember that abortion is an industry just like anything else, any other store. So first of all, go to your state agencies that have these kind of statistics and find out what the teenage pregnancy rate is. If it's a high teenage pregnancy rate in your state and in your area, chances are you're right for an abortion mill. Also, is there a college or university or trade school in your area? Is there a military base, a boot camp, a naval yard? All of these are going to provide customers for abortion mills. The clinics in the area, has one recently closed. Another abortionist may have caused that, and that might cause another mill to come in and fill that vacuum. Also, is there a high minority population? We have seen over and over again where the abortion industry targets minority populations. Also, are there politicians in your area that favor the pro-abortion side, pro-abortion,
especially if they're open
people
about it.
in office and in power?
Especially mayors or just a excuse me, or city council overall, if they're going to make it easier for an abortion clinic to come in, that's a place the abortionist is going to look for.
That's right.
Also, another issue to think about is if abortions are already being performed at the local hospital, it's going to be much easier to recruit an abortionist that way. And if you're in a community that has a population of 35,000 or more, or if you have a population of 35,000 within a surrounding area about a 45-minute drive from your town. And this would include if that a population from a university or a military base that would add to that number. Don't think just because you're in a relatively small town it's not going to happen. They only need, like we said, about 35,000 people to make it happen. Also, if you have a high unemployment rate or a seasonal industry in your community, that's another thing that abortionists are going to look for. Or if a retired abortionist or a high-profile pro-abort OBGYN lives in your area, that's the type of person that the abortion industry is really looking to recruit. And if you have a supply of medical residents in your area, they want to get those student loans paid off as quickly as possible. And so if they're even within a 2-hour drive of your town, a hospital that has medical residents there, that's going to be an area that could be prone for an abortion mill.
You know, we need to point out why it's important if you have a retired abortionist or a retired OBGYN who's high-profile pro-abort, why that's important and why the abortion industry goes after them. They do so because these guys don't have a practice to worry about. A lot of people who would otherwise do abortions don't, because they know they'll lose all their non-abortion patients. Right. And if the guy's retired,
and it's a very lucrative retirement plan, making up to $100,000 a year for working 4 hours a week.
Right, it's a good deal.
That's a nice deal for that.
Now, those are just a few of the suggestions for how to determine if your community is at risk for having one of these death camps move in. But we also want to give you some tips on what to do if let's say they've announced you scored high on a few of these areas. For example, you analyze your area and you're high on the list. You think, yeah, we have 4 or 5 of these factors, so they're probably going to be looking at our town. Or let's say that Planned Parenthood has already announced that they're going to put an abortion mill there, or some other person's announced that they're going to put an abortion mill there. There are some things you can do then. Zentra?
Well, one of the things they can do is contact realtors or property management companies or building owners. They need to be really targeting them to keep them from allowing an abortion clinic to move into their buildings. One of the creative things we've heard of that works is to get pictures of the incoming abortionist or owner, or if you know who it's going to be, the queen bee, the woman who keeps things running at the clinic. Get pictures of these people and send it to the realtors and the property managers so they know who to be on the lookout for, who's going to be coming in for an abortion clinic. Also, we can provide you with the language that a landlord can insert in his or her lease that would basically make the lease abortion-proof, would keep an abortion clinic from being able to operate on their property. The other thing is you need to contact construction companies and subcontractors. Even if the pro-aborts are going to, if the abortionist is going to be using an existing building, he's going to have to do some remodeling. And he's not going to be able to open for business if he doesn't have contractors and subcontractors to get it up to whatever standards he needs. And the third group to contact would be the suppliers that the abortion clinic would need to use to keep in business.
That's right. We know of the importance of being at the killing centers on the days that they're actually doing abortions. However, it's very important to be at these places on non-kill days, because that way you can find out who is making deliveries, note who the linen companies are that are doing business with these clinics, who are the medical waste companies, the regular waste companies, the medical equipment companies that provide the medical equipment, the local pathology labs that come by, who's the cleaning company or the janitorial service, who does the landscaping, who mows the lawn. All of these people need to be contacted and told what kind of business they're serving.
Right, and be discouraged from working with them.
But let's don't pass over this point that you made about being there on non-killing days,
right,
because the abortion mills do not schedule these people to come in on killing days.
No, they don't. Nor do they want to when they have patients.
Right. So a lot of times what you'll find, and we've seen this before, a guy might be delivering linens to a place and not even know it's an abortion clinic. Mm-hmm. So you need to be there on the non-kill days to see who comes and goes on those days.
Right. And there are a few other companies also who should be contacted. The answering services. Almost all medical clinics use an answering service. Get a hold of them. Coffee and vending machine companies, accountants and bookkeeping companies that they need to keep their books. Another group to get a hold of are the banks. Try to discourage them from giving them a checking account, loans, or MasterCard or Visa account.
Right. We've got to exert the not only the political power but the financial power that pro-lifers have. You know, if you have a business, or if you have anything, just a personal level, you don't want to be dealing with people who make the local abortion mill run. And you very often may be, because you don't know who they are. Now, if you've got an abortion mill already operating in your community, you can do a lot of these same things, the things that we've talked about, contacting these people. But there's something else you need to do. If they're renting space, contact the landlord from who they're renting. The landlord may not know that they're having an abortion mill in there. Sometimes we've had people call us and say, we had one landlord call us a couple of years ago and said, I rented this space, I've got a lease with them now for 10 years and an option for another 10. I'm pro-life, I've got no way to get these people out. That may or may not be true. Let me give you some ideas. If you've got a friendly landlord, or you are a friendly landlord, or you're talking with one or whatever, who's pro-life but he's rented to an abortion mill, usually unwittingly, the landlord, even if he rents facilities in his building, still controls the common areas. In other words, the entryways, the hallways, and so forth. That's where he can really exert some influence over getting this abortion mill out. For example, he has the legal right to set up a desk at the front of the building and say anybody who comes in here must present ID. Now, the abortion mill does not want that to happen because they know their patients don't want that to happen. But that is well within the law for the landlord to do if he controls the common areas, which they always do. Another thing is they can put up baby pictures in the common area. We're not talking about aborted baby pictures. We're talking about warm,
Cute
fuzzy,
little baby pictures.
happy
We've
babies.
heard the Ann Getty's pictures with little kids dressed up as sunflowers or as pea pods are especially
little chubby,
effective. Yes, really cute things.
Put those in the common areas. The pro-aborts hate it because they know that a lot of these women are going to come in here and see those pictures and realize what they're doing. The other thing is the landlord can also prohibit death escorts from being in the common areas or in the parking lot. On the other hand, he can invite pro-lifers into the common area or into the parking lot.
You can imagine what kind of response the clinic would have to that.
Exactly.
It sounds like the landlord really does have a lot of power in this situation. But also, another thing that we want you to do is contact the suppliers that we talked about a few minutes ago.
Right.
The next thing is you need to target direct mail that is sent to everyone, especially the people on the staff of the abortion mill.
And we can help with that. We have all of the direct mail things that they need. They can call us. We can show them how to do the direct mail. And that includes, I think you were going to talk about the non-targeted.
Right, the non-targeted
the
pieces to the medical community to let them know. There's a lot of people that need to be informed. Also, once you find out who the suppliers are, boycott them. Again, show up on non-kill days to find out who these suppliers are. Another thing that we can do as pro-lifers is recruit the clients at the abortion mills who have been injured by abortionists.
Yes, absolutely.
Right, and we have, we've talked about them before, postcards, a business card that you can give to the girls as they're exiting the mill and get them to,
they may not even know that they've been injured at that point.
Right, exactly, and get them to seek help if they've been injured or if they need psychological counseling afterwards. We have a toll-free number that they can call for those types of referrals. The other key thing, and we've mentioned this on our previous two shows is that we need you to help recruit information from the Tier 2 employees. These are the medical assistants, the receptionists, the people who don't really have a vested interest in the abortion clinic. We need to know if you want to stand in front of the clinic holding a sign that is targeted towards these employees, telling them if you are a victim of sexual harassment, if you know of any illegal financial dealings like Medicaid fraud that's going on, or if you know of unsafe medical practices, that you have a phone number for them. You have a phone number on that sign that they can call to report these problems and to get themselves out of this undesirable situation.
Absolutely.
But we need calls from you to let us know if you're going to be able to do this. We only have a staff of about 8 people here at Life Dynamics, and we just can't be in front of every single abortion mill in the country trying to get in touch with these employees. You people in the field are the ones who are going to have to do this, and we need to hear from you if you're going to be able to. We've had a handful of calls and several more from the previous show when we asked you to call, but we still need many more people.
Absolutely. And what's Interest telling you is very important, because as good stewards, we cannot go out here and put the system in place that's going to cost a lot of money to get in front of these Tier 2 employees if you're not going to do your part. So we're not going to do it unless you let us know that you're willing to do the standing in front of the mills and trying to get a hold of these employees for us. The other thing is, and as this is the part I don't like, but we have to have the financial resources to continue doing what we're doing here. If you like the things that Life Dynamics is doing, if you think that we're doing a good job, then support us. If you don't, then don't support us. But if you think that what we're doing will help bring an end to this national holocaust that we're involved in here, please remember Life Dynamics in your financial support and in your prayer support, because this is a horrible battle that we're having to fight here, and we're really not going to be able to do it without your help.
Mark Crutcher is the most dangerous anti-abortionist in America. I can't impress upon any of you how seriously you need to take this organization.
LDI's emergence has many abortion rights supporters worried.
Life Dynamics is the scariest and nastiest anti-choice group around. Life Dynamics has become renowned among abortion rights activists as the new bad kid on the block.
I think that we cannot underestimate the determination of Life Dynamics to destroy us, and they have found an exceedingly dangerous tool.
What we have found out about Life Dynamics is they're smart. They're smart enough to come up with at least palpable arguments that make some sense.
I've got to hand it to Life Dynamics. They are on to something very disturbing, and I don't know what we do about it.
Life Dynamics, a Texas-based anti-choice organization, is leading the fight on the new frontier.
I am convinced that Life Dynamics is now the most dangerous pro-life group.
Life Dynamics tactics constitute a real threat to continued access and are seriously crippling the right of women to choose and access legal and necessary abortion services. I've been with the Feminist Women's Health Centers for many years, and then with National Abortion Federation. Watching Life Dynamics makes me realize that our Achilles heel is being struck.
It would be a mistake to underestimate Mark Crutcher and his team.
There's something about Life Dynamics that warns you to take them seriously.
These people are scary.
Well, we're out of time again for this month. It seems like the hour always just flashes right past us.
It really does.
You guys have anything else?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I want to remind everybody that if you see anything in your local press about the baby parts marketing, please let us know. If it's a news broadcast, make a video copy of it. If you get something in the newspaper, photocopy it and send it to us. We want to be able to archive everything that's been covered on this issue. And even if it doesn't happen to mention Life Dynamics by name in the story, we still want to have a copy of it.
That's right. Send us everything and let us know, because the media certainly isn't going to let us know. Also, I want to remind everyone to multiply the effects of LifeTalk. Show it to as many people as you possibly can. We know of instances where LifeTalk is being showed to 500-600 people at once, and that is great.
Absolutely. Yeah, you take one video and you send it out and it gets to 500 or 600 people. The multiplication effect of that is tremendous, right? We know everybody doesn't have that opportunity, but you can show it to your friends or your neighbors or whoever
Or
it might
your
be.
church pro-life group.
Right. And don't forget your subscription. If you subscribe by the month, be sure and send in your envelope today so that you don't miss out on January's edition. And your large donation to Life Dynamics. $5 is large in some cases, $5 million is large in others. So we'll take anything in between, and you're not going to embarrass us by sending us too large a donation. So don't worry about it. And again, if you can't afford LifeTalk, be sure and call us. Don't be embarrassed. You have to call us and say, hey, I just can't afford it right now. That's okay. We're going to send it to you anyway. Again, we're out of time, so remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight. We're here to win, because winning is how the killing stops. See you next month.